Hello, welcome to 51st Chapters webinar. We're going to get started here. I have some laundry list of things to tell you. We've got a chat going up here. You should be able to see it on your right-hand side. And so if you have any questions, you can type your questions in. Welcome to everyone who's coming. We're just barely getting started. Hi. Oh, by the way, my name is Nikki Triumfo.
I'm Heather Clark.
And we are actually real best friends, not pretend ones that just hang out on Twitter. We've actually known each other since before we had any writing experience, really.
Since back when we were interviewed on the news for our first NaNoWriMo.
Yes, that's true. We were only interviewed on the news because, didn't you have contacts or something?
No, because we're awesome.
I know. But yeah, we had never, yeah. Okay, so let me go. Sorry, I have a button undone on my shirt. Okay, so please use the chat bar, especially if you can't hear us or if you have questions about what we're talking about. Just go ahead and type it. There's a 60 to 90 second delay, so it'll feel like some time has gone by and you might be thinking, did they not hear me? But hopefully we will see that chat and be able to address it. Okay, my name, as I said, is Nikki Triumfo. When I first got married, we were trying to have kids. We didn't have kids for almost 5 years. And I thought, what am I going to do with my life? Did I tell you this story?
Yes.
And Laura Ingalls Wilder had written a book, so I was like, okay, I guess that's what I'll do. I'll write a book. And so I took a community ed writing class, and we formed a writing group from some of the students that were in there. And then I had 5 kids in 8 years, of course, because that's what life does to you. I recently signed with an agent named Josh Getzler, and I write YA mystery. I also won the 2013 LDS Storymakers First Chapter Contest. Heather?
I'm Heather Clark, and I've wanted to write books since I was little, and I would sit and write lots of awful starts of novels in notebooks that I've threatened my husband he has to burn if I die, because they're really bad. Oh, I still have all the notebooks, yes. So I always wanted to be a writer, and then I got married and did not tell my writer husband that I was a writer until I wrote a poem for him. At which point, he didn't know. He didn't know.
Oh, wow.
And so, well, because college kind of beat the writing out of you. But anyway, so I wrote him a poem for Father's Day, and I asked him what he thought of it, and he said, it's really heartfelt. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Did I tell you just recently somebody unfriended me because I gave him that poem that I wrote for the novel I'm working on right now?
Oh.
And she was like, that's not good poetry.
That's terrible. I'm done.
So now you know why you should be listening to advice from us. Okay, go ahead.
Plus, I had a published author when I was 17 critique my short story and crush my spirit. And so I didn't write for a long time. But anyway, right when I met Nikki was right when I was starting back up into writing again. We did our first NaNoWriMo. That's about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And we've been working on and off on that together. I've written, I'm in the middle of my 5,000 words into my 4th manuscript. And I won last year's LDS Storymakers First Chapter Contest, and I just signed with my 2nd agent at Christmas. So,
and that is?
Patricia Nelson of Marcel Lyon.
Yeah.
So we're excited.
Okay, so let's see, the purpose of our class, it's called 51st Chapters because when you turn your chapter into anything, whether it's a contest or a query or a reader, they have many, many, many chapters to choose from, at least 50, probably 50,000. And so what is it that's going to make yours stand out? And so that's what we're focusing on today. Also, we're going to talk specifically about earning points for a contest. So, and specifically the LDS Storymakers Contest, because that one comes up, by the way. If you live in Utah and you want to check out LDS Storymakers, you're welcome to. If that doesn't apply to you, just ignore those references. Also, note, Heather and I both will be attending LDS Storymakers, and we both plan to, if we have time, we will probably enter the same contest that we won in previous years, because it's open to anyone who is not published, and frankly, it's really good feedback. It's for published authors that give you detailed feedback of these 7 categories that we're about to go over. And it was really good feedback. I actually entered last year. I got a 2nd place in one of the categories, and I'm really glad I did. I felt like that feedback was totally worth $20. So anyway, just a
little feedback on that feedback. It's really good, but it's also can be very, very spread. So like I know Nikki
yes.
was telling me at one point she got like a 20 from one judge. It's out of 40 and like a 40 from
I
another.
got a 40 from one judge and a 22 in the same year, same exact submission.
Right. So just as you enter the contest, like don't freak out. It's very subjective, and that's actually really helpful to me.
Right.
To see how subjective it really is.
Right. It is. It is. But what they say, and the one that gave me a 22, I didn't. Nothing. Everything. He hated the first line. He or she hated everything about it. In fact, one of the things was, one of them is resolution prompts. Is there a reason to keep reading? And they actually highlighted a line from my chapter and said, this would be good if I liked the story, but I don't like the story. So I'm not going to give you any points. Like, anyway, whatever. His wasn't helpful, but
just blow that off.
Lots of other people's critiques were very helpful. Okay. So going on to 7 attributes of great openings. Hopefully you have this handout. If you do not have this handout, that's okay. Look here at the chat window up on your right-hand side, and hopefully, in fact, we can even do a screenshot really quick. Oh, but theirs is different. You guys, nah, we better not do a screenshot. Sorry, I'm not that good. But you should be able to see it, hopefully. And there's a link there that links to a Google Doc that basically says this. So let me just move that back over. Okay, so we're talking now about what things you have to see in the first chapter in order to want to keep reading, in order to score the chapter high, in order to feel like you've really enjoyed that chapter. So first of all, after they've read the chapter, do they know the premise? A premise is what the story is about. And I want you to think of it this way. Imagine you go to see a movie and you really like it. And then you go to pitch it to your friends and you pitch it like this. It's about a girl and it's really cool. She like goes to a river and like, I think there's a jaguar there. No, it's not a jaguar, it's a lion. If you can't talk about what the movie's about, no one's gonna wanna see the movie. As an author, if you've written 12 to 15 pages and the person who reads it thinks, wow, that was really cool. There was a girl and there was a river and there was a lion or possibly a jaguar. They will not keep reading. I'm telling you, they're gonna pick up another book. They have to know what it's about, which means you have to get to some things. Genre. Anyway, we're gonna go over those things, but I'm just gonna go right off of my paper here. You have to get to the entire premise. So a premise is a one-line statement that tells you what the story is about. Yes, you're gonna get to more stuff later on in the book, obviously. But we want, so what I recommend, first of all, if you haven't written a premise for your novel, and I'm gonna shorten this down to just the first chapter. If you haven't written a premise for it, start there. Write a premise. What is a premise? A premise is a one-line description that has the following things. Irony, it creates a mental picture. It ties in well with the title, which reinforces the premise. And it gives you this sense, it gives you a sense of the intended audience. So we're gonna talk about each one of these. For has irony. Oh, I'll go right off of here actually. For, no I won't, I'm not gonna go off of there. I'm gonna use Pride and Prejudice. So for Pride and Prejudice, the irony is right in the title. The girl is very prideful about how she is not prejudiced, about how she can really read people very well. But then she finds out, actually, not only does she not read others very well, but she really truly doesn't read herself very well, and she doesn't know herself very well. And so therein lies the great irony. Creates a great mental picture. Now, for Pride and Prejudice, I don't know that there is a great mental picture. It's a guy and a girl. But I think if I were going to write a premise for that, if I were going to write it as a movie pitch, I would probably just use a lot of diction from Jane Austen time period. But it's not like it has a killer one, in my opinion. But Legally Blonde has a totally killer one. As soon as you hear the title, as soon as you know it's about this blonde, ditzy Barbie kind of girl that's going to law school, I don't know. I think you totally get it. You could totally picture what that might look like. Of course, you might not be totally correct, but you're going to have a pretty good idea. Also, going back to title, does the premise tie in well with the title? And I know for a first chapter contest, this doesn't, but most of the time the title is bonus at that point. I don't know that you'll be judged on the title necessarily, either for a contest or for an agent, but definitely if you've got the killer title, it's gonna help, right? And So we're going to go over some of these titles. The Maze Runner tells you what it is. In other words, there are probably a bazillion books about kids who are thrown into this other world and they have to navigate the world, but The Maze Runner tells you which one it is. It's the one where he runs in a maze. It's very obvious.
No, it really doesn't. That was
And then I love this one, The Earth, My Butt, and Other Large Round Objects. That's my favorite. But like, obviously that title's awesome anyway. But
right in that title, I know that I've got a sarcastic protagonist who I'm going to enjoy reading about, even though I happen to have one of those round objects for myself.
Not only does it tell you a little bit about which book it is. I mean, there are a million books about girls navigating high school and the popular crowd and who they are and romance and stuff. I mean, there's thousands of books like that. This one tells you which one it is. It's about a girl who's kind of overweight doing that. It also tells you, it's also funny. Anyway, it's just funny. So, and then the very last one is gives a sense of intended audience. And I will talk about this just a little bit. In the premise, I'm going to use two examples. I don't know if you've seen it, but October Sky is about a kid who's in like 15 and he kind of wants to escape his hometown of living in a coal area. And then A River Runs Through It is about a kid who's kind of the same age range, but they're very different feels. So, and they're marketed to different people. So October Sky is really marketed more toward the teen audience, and obviously adults too. But A River Runs Through It is much more targeted toward adults. It's about an adult looking back at his youth and trying to make sense of his youth through his adult perspective. October Sky is like, you are the youth. You're right in the thick of it. And your premise needs to kind of give you a sense of that. And so when I talk about premise, go back to your first chapter. Now that you've written your premise and it's awesome, or as awesome as you can make it, go back to the chapter and do you have those 4 things? If you're writing your premise and you realize, hey, I'm having trouble putting a lot of irony into my premise, probably because I don't have a lot of irony that I can think of offhand. Either your story is not as robust as it could be and there's some changes that need to be made, number 1. Or number 2, you might not know your story enough to be able to pull out those ironies. You could talk to your friends and say, what do you think the irony of my story is? Because it turns out that these 4 things are not gimmicks. They are not just a kind of advertising spoof or whatever that kind of gets us interested, even though obviously once we're in the book, we're going to ignore all of this stuff. I mean, these 4 things are keys to telling a good story. Even go back to a sense of the intended audience. The intended audience gives you a sense of where the book starts and where it's going to end. A River Runs Through It is going to end in a very different place than October Sky in terms of the emotional setting of it and in terms of the age of the character, the main character.
Well, and you need to know, you need to really know who that is. And it's interesting, when I started the book that I just got my agent for, I told Nikki that I wanted to have dual protagonists. And one was my book is about a pregnant teenage girl who decides to keep her baby to fill her need for love, but then goes to live with a 40-year-old infertile woman. And I wanted to have dueling protagonists from the 40-year-old infertile woman.
Because they both want the baby.
Right. So we have 2 moms and 1 baby. But the problem is it's a YA novel, and nobody wants to read the 40-year-old infertile woman's deep thoughts about her infertility. And so really it had to just be changed. It had to be a 1 POV book. So knowing my intended audience was really critical there, because I had to change the story I was going to tell. And changing your premise so that it fit a genre very well also changed the actual story. It changed a lot about the story.
And that's important. If you haven't settled in on a premise narrowly, you will not narrowly settle in on a first chapter, and that will be catastrophic for your novel. So if you've already written a novel, but you know that you have a breakdown on one of these things, my recommendation to you is, and this is, I'm going to say this over and over, fix the premise first, then fix the first chapter, enter your contest if you want to, then fix the novel. Do not make the first chapter fit the novel. Make the novel fit the killer first chapter, because you can't sell it without going through the first chapter. And frankly, once you hit the first chapter really, really well, I mean, it jazzes you. You know it. And you rewrote based on a good first chapter.
Yeah.
I certainly rewrote based on a good first chapter. In fact, I actually entered several first chapters into the LDS Storymakers First Chapter Contest, thinking, well, whichever one gets the best bite, that's the novel, all right. I actually kind of knew, like, once I started, I was really excited about some of the other ones, but once I started typing, like, the one, it was like, I could just feel it. There was so many places to go with it. You know what I mean? And then, of course, that is the one that ended up doing the best. Okay, let's go on to the hook. We're going to play a little game with this one.
I'm so scared. I'm on the spot. I have not been prepped for this game.
I purposely did not prep her. Okay. Oh, do we have any questions? Let's make sure. Oh, and for those of you just...
I think Lenny went to take a screenshot.
Oh, okay. There are no chats. If you're out there, chat us, and then we'll know.
Yeah, raise your hand. Please raise your hand. We think we're alone.
I know.
We're feeling like posers.
I know, that's so true. Okay. What was I going to say? I was going to say
You're
that
not raising your hands.
It's
no, I'm just kidding. It's fine.
60 to 90 second delay.
Right.
They're totally
I was
raising
listening
their hands.
to
They're
you.
standing up and yelling.
They're cheering.
Okay, for those of you just joining us, though, because some people had engagements or whatever, they had stuff to do. If you're just joining us, this is 50 First Chapters. It's a web seminar about writing good openings. So welcome. And let's go on to, I didn't prep her for this, but we're going to do a little game. We're going to talk next about a great hook. Now, I think that a great hook is more than just a first line, although a killer first line can be awesome. It can be a line, a scene, it can be a world, it can be a character, it can be all kinds of things. So I'm going to ask, my son is crying, we're going to ignore him. I hope that
he has a babysitter.
I know. I hope that it's
Don't
okay.
call me Sia.
Thanks, Heather. That was really helpful. Okay. Do I really need to go out there? Tell us about hooks.
Sure.
Or do you want to go on to, why don't you go on to
my part?
Why don't you go on to your part?
I'd
It
love
is
to. Conflict.
Conflict. Actually, that's true.
I'm
Yes.
so excited to talk about conflict because honestly, this is the thing that changed my life. I wrote my first novel. I wrote like twice, and by the time I got through the second read, Nikki, who should be sitting here to hear this, said to me the worst line ever. She said, "What does your character want?" And I just wanted to kill her because I couldn't frame what my character wanted after 2 drafts through that novel, and so I thought she was really mean. But what I discovered about that is what your character wants is what we really want to see. So if you're going to have conflict, you've got to start with a character who really wants something. The meaningful conflict is not going to come in the form of like arguments or embarrassing moments or any of those other things that are fun and add to the book. And hopefully those things can layer on in to the conflict that you've got going on. But your key conflict is going to answer the question, what is at stake in the story and how is tension used? And first, I would just want to ask you to look at 3 things. Number 1, what is your character's emotional desire? Number 2, what is your character's concrete desire? And then the third part of that is, what is their announced strategy? What are they going to do to accomplish their goals? And also, I guess there's a fourth part, their controlling belief. Now, if you want to know more about this, if you go to www.yoheather.com, that's my website, and I have a post all about this, and I think Nikki linked to it in the initial handout.
It's on my website too.
But basically, what I want to know is, what does your character want emotionally? So I'm going to use the example of the book I just finished. Tessa is broken because she's lived with her neglectful mom all these years. Her grandmother has died. She doesn't have a family, not a family that really works for her. And so what she needs is love and family. So that's her emotional. So her emotional desire is for love and family. And then her concrete desire, at the end of the chapter, we see a glimpse of her concrete desire. What happens is Tessa is pregnant. Her mother is forcing her to abort her baby. But as she sees that baby for the first time, she feels like... On the ultrasound, she feels like, maybe I'm not alone. And at that point, she refuses the abortion. And at that point, that's kind of what launches her whole story. But the point there is that what she needs is love and family. And then her concrete desire becomes form a family, build my own family through keeping this baby. Her controlling belief is that if she loses this baby, if she doesn't have this baby, she might be alone forever. And that it might be the only way to meet her need for family. And so then her announced strategy, and this is really important, her announced strategy is going to be what she decides to do that will move her around through the story and exactly how she's going to accomplish that. So, and
of course it's not going to work.
It won't work. Yeah, her now strategy will be terrible and it will fall apart. But so, and that's the point of conflict. So really, when we've established what this character wants and what matters, why it matters to her, and then what is at stake. If she loses this baby, this chance at family, she could be alone forever.
And tell us which parts of those have to be in the first chapter.
Okay. You have to have an emotional desire line in the first chapter. You must. Yes. If it's not there, and honestly, it should be on the first page, and it should be close to the first paragraph. We need to see it. Now, sometimes you don't have to have your character sit there and say, oh, I'm so sad. I just wish I had family and love. You don't have to do that. But what I do is I have Tessa. I have Tessa in this show the lack. I have her in this broken car with her broken mother, and I just show how much she is lacking in that first part. And so same with like Harry Potter. That's why we started the Dursleys. So show the lack. We've got to have the emotional desire. Sometimes you can hit the concrete desire by chapter 2. I only hint at it at the end of my first chapter because she doesn't know she's keeping that baby yet. And so that becomes her chapter 2 thing. And then we're going to hit her announced strategy by about the 3rd chapter. She's like bewildered, like, how do I begin to be a teen mother with a mom who's going to kick me out if I don't abort this baby?
So you talked about how to put the conflict into the first chapter. In other words, her emotional need is that she needs this family, but of course it's too easy if you have her say.
She can't say it.
You know what I mean? So you're going to have other characters talking about family.
Like I have her mother at one point say to her, no, you do not get to do this. You do not ruin your life like this.
Right.
And because her mother was a teenage pregnant mom with Tessa. And so when her mother says to her, you don't get to ruin your life, we see that Tessa has no one who thinks that she's important.
Right.
We also get to feel, is this where you wanted me to talk about the visceral stuff?
No, that's later. That's later. Thank you for saving me. He needed milk. He's really, really cute. Okay, so you have to give in, always, always. Okay, we're gonna play my game now. Ready? This is so easy. It's so easy. What kind of hook do you think this is advertising? Line, world, or scene? It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Line. Do I win?
Yes!
Yes!
That was Charles Dickens.
Yes, in A Tale of Two Cities.
What do you think it's advertising? What do you think, what kind of all the things he could advertise, what is he advertising with that line? It's an open-ended
I think we're just talking about the two different societies, really.
So we're highlighting irony.
It was good for some people, it was not good for others.
So we're talking about the irony of the time. The world itself had irony. There you go. We've already established one of the 4 premise.
Like it always rained on everyone's wedding days.
Anyway, so he's already hit 1 out of the 4, and he's only 1 chapter, 1 sentence in.
That's awesome.
And so also it really advertises his voice and his strong narrator. And that goes to, are you putting your best thing first? And we're going to talk more about this in our 3rd episode webinar thing. But organizing your first chapter so that you're hitting your strong points first. So ponder on that. We're going to talk about it more later. What about this one? There's a guy, and he doesn't know who he is or where he is, and he's in a crate. And he is surrounded by other people.
Oh, does he run in a maze?
Yes! Yay!
What
book is that?
The Maze Runner.
By James Dashner. What do you think he's advertising? In other words, what thing that James Dashner does, what things that he does well, is he highlighting right there, first page?
The kid he has no memory. Okay. So we've got clearly he's had his memory erased. He's in a crate. That's like he's being controlled somehow. Right. He comes up to the top and he's suddenly in this
Are we advertising like
environment.
Amazing voice, amazing insight into the world? No, we're advertising massive amounts of action, and we're really advertising pacing. Because when you look at it, he does not think, I don't know who I am.
We don't start in a hospital room where his memory is just been wiped.
No. Like he pretty much finds out that there's a maze, and he's like, I'm gonna run in it. Yeah. And it's pretty much like we're there. So we've got, and that's what the book is. So we're advertising, and people who want that fast pace, that action, we've got it on the first page. We know what the whole story is, and we've got it really, really soon. What about there's a character staring at 2 other starving characters and thinking about how she almost killed one of those characters' cats.
Oh, it's Hunger Games. I just reread that first chapter in preparation for this.
Very good. Oh, I know. I love that.
That's a good first chapter.
It is. The pacing on that is so excellent. We're gonna. In fact, I have homework for you next week. Your homework will be to read the first chapter of Hunger Games if you want to do it. But oh, do we still don't have any takers?
I think no one's watching.
What if you know what?
We're alone.
Here, you talk now about, that's the end of our game. Why don't you go on to setting?
I would love to.
And while you're talking, I'm going to make sure that this is live. Let's just make sure. I'm pretty sure it is. But
that would be hilarious if it's not live.
no, it would not. It would not be hilarious. It would be very, very sad. Continue.
Okay, all right, so we're going to talk about setting here. And, you know, honestly, your setting needs to be a metaphor. If you don't make your setting a metaphor, I don't want to read your book. And I didn't learn that myself. I learned that from my idol, Martine Levitt, that Nikki mocks me all the time because I love her so much. If you ever
besties! I can't.
get to take
my
a class,
bestie has left me.
I don't love Nikki as much as I love Martine Levitt. I just love her. So, but what I'm going to tell you about what she told me is metaphor, 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 metaphor. Please do not tell me, I'm sad. Do not have your character say, I'm sad. If your character has to name her emotions, then you're not writing it well enough. So get to that point where your character is sad and take the setting and make it a metaphor. So my character in my book that I just finished is agitated.
Okay, let me just interrupt. I'm so sorry. Hi. We thought we had chat over there, but our chat window is over here, and I apologize. We thought we had.
We're such dorks.
I'm so glad that we're not alone.
We're not alone.
Okay, good. You keep going. I'm going to read these and make sure we don't.
You go and read those and make sure there's not something important. Well, you're all important. So, but what I'm going to say is, like, in my character is getting. She goes into the abortion clinic, and the first thing that happens when she enters the abortion clinic is it's warm. It's set up to soothe. The beautiful setting is like all warm, like a living room. It's really nice. However, it's warm physically. Like the setting is visually warm, but there is aggressive air conditioning. She instantly breaks out in goosebumps. She also realizes that her cutoff shorts and her tank top definitely were not proper attire for this thing. She's uncomfortable. Things are scratchy. She's also pregnant, so she's sick. She feels like she's going to vomit. Her nausea is really helpful, and I had to tone that down because it was a little much.
She was vomiting.
She vomited every time she felt anything.
She was vomiting as much as people really vomit.
Just stop. And she peed her pants, and people told me to stop the pants peeing. So anyway, but she needed to pee. She was uncomfortable. She was drinking the water for the ultrasound, all of these things. And then she lays back on the thing and they're pushing into her bladder with the ultrasound probe. And I'm using everything about what's happening in that setting. Even her mother, when her mother walks out of the abortion clinic, her flip-flops are slapping across the thing. And we're getting this view of this mom who's not maybe super classy as she takes her daughter to get her abortion in the flip-flops and they're in the shorts and all that. And this is really disconcerting because right now what I'm seeing on the screen in front of me is a super fast video of me and Nikki. So it's awesome. No, it's totally fine. So just make your setting into a metaphor. Take every sense, take what they smell, take what they see, and interpret it according to what they're feeling in their brain. I think it's so helpful, and it has changed mood and setting for me.
Right.
Are you ready for pacing and styling?
Yes,
or shall I filibuster and start reading Save the Cat?
Oh, that's our go-to. Seriously. We thought if we run out of things to save, which will never happen,
no,
we will just read directly from Save the Cat. That's how important this book is. We will open up to any page, just start reading it, and you would learn.
And we will also drink water under the guise of needing to clear our parched throat.
Yes, let's see. Oh, good, 8:27, good. I wasn't sure how long we would go. I'm thinking another maybe 20 minutes or so. If we wax awesome, then maybe we'll go longer. I don't know. Okay. Let's make sure, so we've got conflict. Okay, and I do have to say one thing about conflict. This is how I was going to introduce Heather's thing. Conflict is not argument. I have children. They argue all the time. I could record them, then I could type what they say, then I could publish it. And there's lots of conflict there. And no one would ever
it's all about milk
buy it. Because the two forces that are coming opposed to each other they're forces over like the dumbest stuff ever. So we want to see, we don't actually want to see a lot of argument. What we want to see, think of the Titanic. Think of the Titanic floating in one direction, the ice staying in the same place, and then think of the camera, Titanic, ice, Titanic, ice. They're not arguing. They're completely silent, which is nice. I wish my kids were totally silent. But we can see that there's going to be a collision there. So when you're talking about your first chapter, you need to show very clearly. You don't need to show that conflict is happening right then necessarily. Your character isn't really fighting with her mom.
No.
Not so much.
She's not.
But we can see this huge force. We can see Tessa wants so badly one thing, and the world is saying so much that is impossible. What she wants is impossible, will never happen. And we are like, when is that going to happen? And I think that's really important. So when we're talking about conflict in the first chapter, it's not the explosion. Don't get confused on that. Make sure that we're seeing very clearly direction, the direction people are going.
In fact, sometimes if you start with too much, like, well, my sister and I have a code word for like when something needs to get all action-y, we just say Michael Bay, Michael Bay. If there's too much Michael Bay in your first chapter, like people can't settle it.
Unless that's what you're
going for an action novel, unless you're in a crate coming to the top of the thing.
If you're in a crate coming to the top of the thing and the whole thing is maze running and it's awesome like that, then do that. You know what I mean?
But you don't have to do that.
Make sure that that's what you want. I mean, because a lot of people think about first chapters in terms of like, well, we want to start with a bang. You know, we want to start with something that's interesting that's going to hook the reader. And I agree that I think it's good to brainstorm ideas to how to make things interesting, but at the end of the day, we need to be able to see clearly the direction that is sending us.
Keep going.
You were talking about 50 Shades of Grey?
No, I was just going to type about it.
Mike, when he heard my title, which was 51st Chapters, which I was like so proud of, he was like, that sounds like 50 Shades of Grey. I'm like, you ruined it for me. What?
Go here. Sorry. What? I just clicked something.
Skip the ad?
No. I just accidentally clicked something.
Oh, don't worry about it.
I'm very sorry. Okay.
No, don't worry about it. I chat. As long as, hey, we're going to go, Heather's going to talk about, for 1 second, just read from Save the Cat.
I just do something bad?
I just want to make sure we're still,
oh my gosh.
We're still on
We're super inept webinar people, but I'm the one who just destroyed our lives if you're off.
It says that we're still going. So.
Sounds good. Okay, just show us the chat again, so in case they want to say something other than 50 Shades of Grey, that
I think you just clicked on another.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, we're good. We're good. Sorry.
Go.
Okay, characters. So the way that it says it on, I have to cover up my face when I'm talking because otherwise I will only look at myself, which sounds really vain, but it's more, I don't know, you just never see yourself.
That you're a narcissist, but I'm just going to get it going.
You were looking at yourself too.
I totally was.
Okay. Characters. The quote from LDS Storymaker's first chapter contest is this: are these compelling real people whom the reader cares about? So they are going to rate you on whether the people are actually real. Think about that. No, just kidding. So I wrote on here that you need to look at dialogue a lot. Dialogue does bring people to life. You want to make your characters talk. I even said on here, you know, if you don't have a character to talk to, they can have an imaginary friend. In fact, you're dealing with that right now. You're having her talk to animals or whatever because she doesn't have a lot of friends at first. I have her talk to her dead sister. My story is about a girl who is doing a mock trial, and they are putting a popular JFK conspiracy theory on mock trial, and she finds out that her sister, who was supposedly killed by accident, may have instead been killed by a conspiracy. So she talks to her dead sister sometimes. Not really talks to her, but, you know, she like flashbacks of her, and there's a big, you know, a lot of, anyway, so that's one way to keep her, because she doesn't have a sidekick for quite a while, and a lot of times characters don't. It's hard to introduce everything right at first. And so sometimes in order to introduce the first main character or protagonist very well early, you save the introducing of other important characters. So, but you still have to have them interacting or talking or whatever. Okay, so number 3, let's see here.
Are you still talking about characters?
I'm still talking about characters. You have 2 goals or 2 jobs when you're establishing your character in your first chapter. You need to define who the character is and make the reader like the character. Okay, so defining who it is, like in Heather's case, we had to define that she was from a broken family and that you need to define the direction that she's going. I guess that goes back to the direction that they're going. There are a million things you can list about any person or character, and all of those might be significant. The significant thing is the direction they're going, where we can see the world or another character or whatever it is going to be opposing that in a massive way at some point. So we need to know that by the first chapter, and also we need to like them. Now, there are a lot of ways to like a main character. A lot of times main characters are given a lot of really likable attributes. Sometimes too many. You can go too far with it, right? But we like really strong characters, but we also like characters if your character isn't particularly, okay, we like the normal things people like. We like strong characters or good-looking characters, charming, funny, they're
witty, intelligent.
Yeah, whatever. So there's that. And that's awesome. If you want to have like a James Bond, that totally works. If that's not the more the field that you're going for, you could have your character be wounded. My character, first page, the only thing she cares about, the only relationship she has that's working for her is her sister. I kill the sister in one page. Dead. She's gone. So then as soon as we see that, we have sympathies for her. She's been wounded and wounded very badly. And so it's hard not to see. It's hard. When you see somebody suffering, you generally sympathize for them. So that's another angle you could go.
As long as they're not whining.
That's true, and I don't have her whine.
No, you don't.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Unless they're funny when they whine. There are ways to break all of these.
Right, they can be funny.
Right, and also if they're whining about one thing, but you can see their actual problem is maybe a different thing, maybe more layered, and you can see that they don't even know themselves very well. Again, that's another way to sympathize with them, that you do have to sympathize with them. And a third way, be careful with this, but the book Save the Cat is actually called Save the Cat because he advocates so strongly that you make the character likable right at the beginning. And he talks about maybe you could have the character run up a tree and save a cat while he's doing something. The only thing I'll say about that is that random acts of charity sometimes don't do what you think they're going to do. They have to make sense and they have to be in character. They have to be maintained all the way throughout. My character does not do anything nice to anyone. It's not like she does mean things to people, but she's actually pretty mean in her thoughts. She sees a gangbanger. She thinks her sister was killed by a gang. She's pretty prejudiced toward him. Do you know what I mean? She's pretty much like, he's the problem in our town. He's the reason, you know, and I mean, she is very damning right from the get-go toward this guy. She's not very nice in her thoughts toward the teacher or the brunette girl. That's true. Pretty much the only reason why you really like her, she has some funny, you know, kind of interesting ways of saying things, and then she's just so hurt. Yeah. And she has no hope.
You can go with her.
Yeah, she has no hope of ever not being hurt. She doesn't even have, she has an emotional lack, but she has no concrete goal. She has nothing. She just,
not yet.
Yeah, no. She's just broken. So anyway, we like really broken people, but other people have different kinds of stories, and that's fine. But just make sure, do you have a way that your character is likable? And if it's not one of those three ways, awesome. Invent your own, but make sure that it is there. Okay, we're gonna go on to, sorry, we're not doing these in order. So we've done premise, hook, conflict, character, setting.
It is my turn. Right? Yes? No?
Yeah, actually that's perfect. We're gonna switch again. We're gonna do resolution first because it makes it easier to talk about pace and stuff.
Right. So the resolution situation, this is interesting, and particularly because of the first chapter contest. Nikki had won that year before, and when I was entering for my first time last year, I sent her my chapter to
first time you
review.
enter and you won the grand prize. We hate her.
Because the universe is nice. So, well, because I Nikki. Just kidding. No, for real, not all the time. Nikki. Yes, because I had Nikki. It's true. No, so what's interesting is that I had a really great first two chapters, but I did not have a great first chapter yet. And so what happened was that Nikki said to me, Heather, this is good. This is all good information, but you have your character getting to one point and we still don't know what her decision. We don't have the hint of what's going to change everything.
Well, we didn't know what the story was about. We knew the girl was pregnant, and we knew she needed family, and.
Right, and she's told to have an abortion, right?
Right.
So instead, Nikki said to me, if you can get to this point in the middle of chapter 2, by the end of your first chapter,
where she decides, I will not actually have the abortion. I will choose to not.
Right. So the last line of my first chapter. I will fight
all of the world.
I will fight everyone. And she doesn't say that, but the last line of the first chapter, she turns to the abortion clinic nurse after she's seen her baby on the monitor, and she suddenly has felt not alone, And she turns to the abortion clinic nurse and she's just shaking and she says, can anyone force you to have an abortion? And that's the last line of the chapter. So there's our hint. We know now that she's made that decision and that she is not going to do it. And so we know this is going to be a girl who's going to be stronger than just being broken, who's not just going to be, you know, all these things happen in that one line.
Again, going back to direction, we can see her before she's had a big need and society's not fulfilling it. And then we have this huge thrust of direction. She now knows how she's going to fulfill her problem, and it is sending her right into reality, which is saying, like, you are 16. This is not going to be as beautiful as you think it's going to be.
She's going to face her unloving, unsupportive boyfriend. She's going to face all the things.
There are all kinds of disasters.
Now, I honestly guarantee you, if I had not done that, that would not have been the grand prize winning chapter. Because it used to end in a nice place. It ended at a point where she says, now I'm going to go back into the sterile medical part of the clinic. It's go time. She's going to go have an abortion. That's where it ended.
Right.
And that's just not the same. It's not as strong. And what was hard about the LDS Storymakers First Chapter Contest is that they make you narrow it down to 3,000 words. And so I got there in about 4,500 before, I think, or 4,000. Yeah, right. And so I had to cut a whole bunch of stuff. And you know what's interesting? I put some of that back in for the one that I sent to my agent.
3,000 is not enough.
It isn't quite enough.
And you'll notice YA won last year, YA won the year before. I think YA even won the year before that. YA can kind of do it, but if you're in an adult category, if you win the first place in that adult category, you're my hero. You killed it, because it is almost impossible to put in all of the complexity that an adult book would need, because it really does. It needs to have more, and to get that in 3,000 words, really,
you're gonna have a really hard time. If you can find the line, find something that's coming, that's gonna hint, that's gonna and create that feeling sooner in your entry, regardless of how you then revamp it to put it back to what it should be.
Right.
But I mean, it really did help me. I cut a lot of words that did stay out.
Right.
Because
I also cut a lot.
Because really, there shouldn't be a word in your first chapter that doesn't have to be there.
Okay. Excellent. So now we're going to talk about pace and style, and this goes. You don't even need pacing and style unless you have a deadline. In other words, if you have a reader that's with you, maybe you have a fan base, maybe you, whatever, if you have a reader that's going to be with you no matter how long you take, well, then pacing doesn't matter as much, right? I mean, you can just get to things when you get to things, but most people have an attention span that only goes so far, and we're bred, so to speak, or we're conditioned, if you will, because of chapters that we've read in the past and books that we've read in the past. The chapters are about 3,000 to 5,000 words, and that something happens so that we know what the forces are that are going to collide in that span of time. Now, there are books that have what do we want to call it? It's not really the inciting incident, but the what it's about moment, the premise moment. Sometimes that does happen in chapter 2. I've seen it happen in chapter 2 in many published things. So don't stress. My recommendation for you on pacing and style is this: for contests, specifically LDS Storymakers, where you have a hard cap at 3,000 words, do not cut off your chapter at 3,000 words. Wherever you are landing at 3,000, cut it off from there and just hand it in. You will not.
You won't place.
You won't, because there are too many of these, and you can see how many times we talked about the two forces running into each other. And if you don't get to that moment, it doesn't matter how good your writing was. You just can't. You cannot get points enough on the little scoring sheet to do very well. So shorten it as much as you need to. Cut the things that aren't necessary for that chapter, even if it's necessary for later in the book. If there's a character that you introduce that's totally pivotal and they have to be introduced then, but you could understand the first chapter without them, cut them. Just for the contest, put them back in for when you're querying. Now, when you're querying, I recommend you can go more like 4,000 on a first chapter, but you can't go 8. Okay, right. You can't go 8,000, and you do want to get to that.
Yeah, you gotta get there. If you don't get there, they won't keep reading. It's
not the crash moment. It's the two moment. It's the setup for the crash.
It's when we see both elements and we know how they will conflict.
We see the one and the other, and we're like, that's gonna be
Titanic.
interesting.
I'm gonna use that every day.
Right.
For the rest of my life.
Good. I'm gonna wake up in the morning and I say, I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And Titanic is where it's at.
Nikki's child is gonna want milk. Nikki is doing a webinar.
Okay, so how do you do it? So you've got this thing, your real moment where the scene goes from the Titanic to the ice back to the Titanic, and we know what's coming. Let's say that's 8,000 words in. So now pacing is basically editing at that point. How do you edit it out? Obviously, you're going to search common words that you know you're overusing, even words like and to. Anytime you have a prepositional phrase like to the bank or to the, you know, I gave the paper to the girl for the, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you're just over explaining, you're just too wordy. Try to get every sentence down. And of course, if the voice, you got to keep the voice. So that means that every statement that you make.
That's a good question. You should get to the next question in a minute.
Okay. Okay, we'll get to that in just 1 second, Nick. Okay. Do you want to go? Do you want to just
I would love to go talk to your children.
I'm so sorry.
I'd be so happy to.
They have food and chocolate and all kinds of stuff out there. Sorry, you guys. Okay, my husband was supposed to be home, and then
they're super cute.
I know he has tickets to the BYU basketball game, and I found out about it 5 hours ago. So all of a sudden we had to do something different. But all right. So talking about pacing and styling, which is basically now editing down to what you, getting to where you need to be in the right amount of time. Obviously on the sentence level, you're gonna wanna cut it down. You're gonna wanna keep voice. Voice to you is kind of however you define it, but if you have some moments where you think this really shows how they think, how they talk, what they value, the fact that she's looking at this bird instead of looking at this mouse and keyboard or whatever is significant. It kind of shows you what she values and where the story is going and whatever. Basically what I'm saying is that every scene or every line is going to have to be serving two functions. Where did I wrote this on here. Right, so every statement is working really hard at this point. It's establishing tone and it's establishing setting at the same time. Or it's establishing the main character's emotional state and it's giving background information at the same time. And again, go read Hunger Games because every statement is so, she just does not have time to be messing around. She has to get to where they are pulling the name for the Hunger Games. And so everything that the characters talk about, she's establishing the friendship, she's establishing the kind of quasi-romance with Gail, but while she's doing that, you're learning all the background that you need, and it's done so seamlessly. I can't believe how well she did that. But you never have these huge paragraphs of background information that you have to lug through, and then you have these fun, peppy dialogues between the characters. That does not happen. She makes the dialogue between the characters peppy enough, but also she includes the background information into that conversation enough that she's doing both at the same time. And you'll find probably that you need to do similar things. Okay. So that's all I have to say.
Great.
Oh, I will say this. So for a chapter, cut it to 3,000. But for an agent, oh, I already said that. For an agent, make sure that you can go a little longer, but make sure that you're getting to a big.
Did you address next question?
No, I didn't. So that's what we're going to do now, and then we're going to draw a winner, and then we're going to be done. It's going to be awesome.
Unless any of you type his questions in the next 2 seconds.
Well, that's true. Twilight breaks some rules, people. We're not going to talk about Twilight. People who love Twilight should talk about Twilight. Okay.
Okay, I just saw the question about someone saying, Monique is saying that she's starting to freak out, not sure how to make this happen in her story. Well, guess what? Like, we are not really big time people, which means we have time, which means we have time to chat with you about this. And I would love to. So,
except we're really busy right now. We're really busy right now. Are you really gonna?
I can totally chat with you.
Okay, but we are both. Right now, we happen to be swamped with.
We're going out on submission. We're going out on submission at the end of the month, and we have not written our first chapters for the first.
I will tell you the whole reason why I did this entire conference or seminar thing was because I was supposed to be on submission already. And so I was supposed to be getting my mind off of submission and all the waiting. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be awesome and a teacher and blah, blah, blah. And instead, my agent got me my notes, my edit notes, a full month and a half and longer than that wait after he thought that he would. And so so now I have to do both at the same time. So we are a little tiny bit busy. But she's going to chat with you.
Okay, pause. So I really would love to chat with you, Monique, if you want to. You can tell me about your chapter and we can talk about these things. These are the kind of things that Nikki and I talk about all the time instead of paying attention to our children while we're hanging out. And I don't think you should freak out. I would just be calm, because even if you can do one or two of these things, it's going to change how you do in the contest. And either way, all of the things that are coming around here are going to help. So what I'm going to suggest to you is send me an email or tweet me or message me on Facebook.
Right.
So one of those things. Tweet me at hclarkwrites on Twitter.
Fine. Tweet me too.
Tweet Nikki too. She has plenty of time for you.
I will just stay up until midnight.
I am going to agree with Monique on his chapters sound like they're too short. My question is, if you're not on mix, yeah, if you're 2 to 3 chapters and it's only 3,000 words, it depends on your genre. If it's middle grade,
yes.
or
shoot us your genre and what your story. Just give us a little bit about what your story is.
That would be helpful.
But even a middle grade, you're gonna. Although I've seen several middle grades like to have lots of choppy chapters. You know, they like to have like 47 chapters, and a book is only like 250. So in that sense, I guess they might get to the big pivotal setup. Right. They might get to that in chapter 2. Actually, the one that I read was in middle grade, just recently, Chronicles of Egg, and he definitely had it clearly in chapter 2. He only establishes in chapter 1 the lack. That's all he establishes. It's just that the family wasn't meeting the needs.
Well, sometimes if we're doing those short, choppy chapters, then Nick, you might just be kind of hosed on that first chapter contest, because it's possible. Can he submit multiples?
Well, what
Can
if
he submit up to 3,000 words?
What if you just did don't
break it. Do scene break.
Yeah, just do a scene break and just keep going. So just do a scene break, and then but make sure your ending feels wherever you're. So here's the other thing: if you have that big Titanic-ish kind of setup, and you have that at 2,600 words, let's say, and don't put anything else in just to get up to 3,000. You know, make that your chapter end for sure. And so, but if you have a scene that you used to call chapter 1, and then you have chapter 2, and it's at the end there, then just combine them with a scene break. The other thing I was going to say there, though, I wonder about complexity. And again,
that's what I was thinking too.
You know, when you're writing a story, you want to look at it from lots of different angles. And when you're early in writing the story, you might not have explored a lot of angles yet. Here, I have to cover myself up. Sorry.
No, it's creepy.
Well, it's all the hand motions. I feel like I'm being flagged down. Do you feel like you're being flagged down as you watch? Sorry. But so as you're writing, if your manuscript is complete, Nick, then that's a little different. But for a lot of people, as they're starting to write, let's say they're 5 or even 20,000 words in, their book doesn't have as much complexity as it will eventually have. And what you'll notice is that the levels of complexity that you get, think of it as like well, okay, we're going to just stick with Titanic. When we're looking at Titanic, we've got a big view of the ship and a big view of the iceberg, right? But those aren't the only views that need to be included. We've got that, but we also have to have a view from the point of view of the main character, looking out toward the water, looking out toward how pleasant everything, looking out the girl has her whole life ahead of her, right? And we know that the iceberg is coming. So we have 2 views there. We have the boat, that's the objective view, looking at it from the outside, and then we have her looking at her whole life, and we know
there's an iceberg.
There's an iceberg. Okay, so you need to have both of those in the first chapter. And you might even have to have, there needs to be like side plots and other things that are going to be included in a really good first chapter. They're going to have all of that. If you don't have all of that, it's possible that you haven't created that yet, or it's possible you haven't brought that back into the first chapter yet.
It is possible that you can't get into the first chapter with some of that stuff. And it's interesting because when Nikki says, what's your premise? When I tell my premise, I say, pregnant teenage girl who wants to keep her baby to find family, who goes to live with a 40-year-old infertile woman.
Right.
She doesn't get to 40-year-old infertile woman's house until about page 100, 120.
Salem does not know that her sister definitively was actually murdered until way later. She just
and that's okay.
Something's up.
We don't even know. In fact, the infertile woman is introduced in chapter 1 in like a one-line throwaway, but we're not going to see that till later. So Monique, I was wondering if you're starting to freak out slightly, if you're thinking that you have to include everything about the major conflict. You don't.
No,
you don't.
Right. So a lot of it is.
Hold on, you had a question too.
You guys are prolific. Give us a minute. I do.
James' question about the Titanic there.
After this chapter is part of spy. Oh, okay. Okay. Does the MC have to be on the ship? Can be on the iceberg? Totally can be on the iceberg. Love that idea. Go ride it. Let's have a person on the iceberg when the Titanic hits it, dude. That sounds like a great idea. I actually really like that.
I really want to know how that relates to your current work in progress. That's exciting to me.
No, but for real though, the story goal can be one of two things. It can be somebody who wants to do something and change the world that, the current world that they're living in, or it can be, and just as good, it can be a person who likes the world that they're living in, sees an antagonist about to change that world and thinks, no, I have to fight that antagonist. I have to fight for stasis. And that's a totally great, so if the person on the iceberg, especially if they're thinking, this is great, this is what I need to be doing, I'm looking at this ship, it's coming toward me. Maybe I don't even know, maybe the reader knows, but something big is coming and I need to stop it. So that's, I don't know if that addresses your question, James, but certainly both are a great story goal, either way. Okay. And I love the idea. Let's see, where's the worksheet? Lana, I will email it to you if you want to. It's also, it's on a Google Doc, and if you scroll up through those chats, it's on there somewhere. I also am on Facebook, and I'm actually pretty friendly. James knows me through Facebook. James, did James see?
Cracking me up over there.
That's hilarious. That's why I go on Authors Think Tank, is because of James. So, James, did you see on the original handout that I actually told people to go to Authors Think Tank and add themselves, or to have me add them? And then he signs up for this one, and I'm like, I referenced you. That's when we upload.
This sucks. Nobody's gonna read it. That is a phase that I'm in most of the time.
Well, yeah, of course. This is really great. No one's gonna read it. That's the phase I'm in. This is so great.
I love it so much.
I love it so much. No. Lots of people have works that they love.
Monique, okay. That sounds awesome. Let's chat later. I'd be happy to just even chat on the phone while I pack boxes in my house or something. So we can chat.
She might be listing her house. Awesome. Okay, you guys, seriously, you guys can send me Facebook friend invites, whatever, and we can chat. But I might be 2 weeks, people. I'm trying to do that in 2 weeks.
Me too.
And I know that the chapter contest is February 8th, so. But we can hang out more after that. Okay, now for the big moment. Oh yeah!
The critique. Oh, okay. And this is cool. Next week I'm gonna offer a critique too. So next week there will be.
Oh no way! Really? That's a good idea. Oh, you have homework. This is your homework. You're gonna have homework next week too, if I remember to do it. But your homework for this week, if you want to do it, is it's very simple. Write a premise statement, that'd be like a sentence or so, for Pride and Prejudice. Just what do you think it would be? So try to include the 4 components of a good premise, and then go back to the first chapter if you want to. And if you don't want to use Pride and Prejudice, use whatever you want.
Use Hunger Games.
Use whatever you want. And then go back and read the first chapter and see what they chose to highlight in the first chapter, and whether it was the same kinds of things that you picked out. That's
awesome.
And they might have picked out a different kind of irony than what you did. Had you been the one writing it, the story might have been a little different because you did pick out a slightly different thing. It might have gone in a slightly different
I would say instead of Pride and Prejudice, definitely pick something in your genre that your first chapter that you're working on.
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's a really good idea.
That will really help.
Okay, better.
I would like to correct me.
Okay, I did not have you sign up for this web Comcast thing by name. I only have email addresses, and I did a random number generator, and the winner is Ginger Grouse. I don't know how to say that. Oh, we are totally not centered. Look, are we not centered?
We're centered-ish.
Oh, no, we are. Our head was just cut off in that other view. Okay, so if you are here, you do have to be present to win. So we're going to give you about 60 to 90 seconds. Please give us a quick little chat. I have 2 other winners that will come right after you. I want to tell you, thank you so much for coming. We will be here. Oh, Heather may or may, you might not
call them knob on the chat. Just so you know. Sorry.
I don't even know what
I might be back next week. Otherwise, I'll be on Google Chat.
Yeah, we might do Google Chat, which might be kind of fun. And maybe as we get more technologically savvy, we can have some of you be in Google Chat, and then we could interact with some of you and ignore all the rest of you. So it felt kind of weird, but we could experiment.
Let's try it.
I don't know. But also this video will be up. Now there's about a 20 to 30 minute delay, so it won't show up right away. But in about 20 or 30 minutes, if you go to my YouTube, it's the same link as before. You'll go there. Well, I think it's the same link. I'll put it on my blog if it's not. Anyway, you can watch this video at any time. You can watch it. You can give it to your friends. You can do whatever you want with it. Okay, do we have Lana Pattinson? Did we say that right?
Lana Pattinson?
Pattinson? Yay, Lana!
Yay,
Woo! You win! Now, awesome.
Yes, it showed up.
So, yay, you won. Okay, that's all I have, really. So we will just see you. I'm going to end this, right, pretty much at 9 o'clock on the dot. We will see you. Alana, email me, or I'll email you, and then we'll go from there. I'm so glad I didn't announce the other two, because then
That would have been awkward.
then you didn't really win. Okay, thank you so much. We will see you next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye.